Chapter 3 of A Lucky Penny by a Self-Made Man. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 3, in which Tom takes his first lesson at the case. Tom Garland learned many things that afternoon which educated him to the situation, and he privately made up his mind that Bentley Wick's industrial farm wouldn't hold him any longer than he chose to stay. If his uncle wouldn't remove him, he'd skip out on his own hook, and when he left he intended his new chum should go with him. He took nobody into his confidence but Dick. "If I only could go with you," murmured the lame boy sadly. "And you shall." "No," replied the boy, shaking his head mournfully. "I never could get away." "Oh, yes, you could," answered Tom reassuringly. "How could I? We are so closely guarded here that it will be as much as you will be able to do to get away yourself, and I wouldn't believe you could do that, only you're so smart I guess you can do anything." "Thanks, old chap, but if I'm not smart enough to take you along, why, I'll stay here and put up with my lot." "You are so good," breathed the lame boy gratefully. At that moment the bell rang for supper. The boys all trooped into a washroom, according to the regulations, and Dick piloted the way for Tom. Then they formed into line, with Christopher Rudge at the head, and marched into the big kitchen, where a long table was laid out. It was Garland's first meal at the farm, and he found that the bill of fare that evening consisted of a mug of weak tea, a couple of stewed prunes of ancient vintage, and a single slice of rye bread, without butter. Fortunately, he had enjoyed a good dinner before he came hither with Mr. Sleek, so he didn't mind the insufficient fare. At 8 o'clock, the boys, after listening to a short religious talk by Mr. Wicks in the parlor, were sent to bed, and it happened, by the greatest luck in the world, that Tom was quartered in the same bed with Dick. "How did it happen Mr. Wicks put us together, chum?" asked Tom after they had got under the bedclothes. But Dick wouldn't enlighten him on the subject. "I suppose it must have been chance. I'm glad, aren't you?" "Very glad," replied the lame boy earnestly. "Say, Fanny Wicks is the worst ever, isn't she?" grinned Tom. "Her eyes look like a couple of watery gooseberries in a door jamb. And her nose, oh, Lord, it's turned up for fair. Her mouth looks big enough to swallow a whole mince pie. She's a regular sight." "I saw her smile at you once or twice," said Dick. "You're so good-looking that I shouldn't be at all surprised if she got sweet on you." "Don't! I really couldn't stand her." "If she gets to like you, you'll have an easy time of it here," said the lame boy. "How's that?" asked Garland with some interest. "She does anything she likes. She could get you outside on the street if she took it into her head to do so." "Oh, I see," replied Tom, an idea flashing through his brain. "Perhaps I'd better try to get friendly with her. She may turn up useful one of these days." Dick smiled at the suggestion, but made no remark. Next morning at 6, the boys, as usual, were routed out of their beds by the ringing of a loud-mouthed bell. At 6:30, a watery portion of oatmeal was placed before each one at the table. This, with a small potato apiece, a slice of bread, and a cup of some decoction which went by the name of coffee, constituted their morning's repast. At 7 o'clock the foreman of a printery arrived, and all hands got down to business for the day. Tom was placed before a frame on which was laid a printer's lower case, with a single alphabet of big Gothic type distributed in it, and was instructed to learn the layout of the boxes. "This is the A box," said the foreman sharply, picking up the letter and showing it to Tom. "You can read the letters, can't you?" "Sure thing." "This is B up here," pointing to another compartment in the case, exactly one half the size of the A box. "C is next to it," showing him. "D is next, and this box, which you observe is the largest of all, is E." "That's easy," said Garland. "Is it? You won't find it so when I have you pick 'em out yourself," replied the foreman sarcastically. "Now watch me point out the others." And he did so, Tom following him attentively. "I'll get them down fine in a while." "I hope you will, for I hate to waste time on such ignorant beasts as you chaps are when you first start in." "Thank you," said Tom politely. The foreman stared at him in some surprise, but said nothing. "After you learn the boxes perfectly, so that when I dump the letters out you can replace them in their proper places, excepting the P, D, B, and Q, which I don't expect you to master right off." "Why not?" asked Tom. "What's the matter with them?" "The matter with them is this. They look alike to the eyes of a beginner when mixed up." "Do they?" remarked the boy innocently. "I shouldn't have thought so." Mr. Runyon looked at him suspiciously as if he thought the boy was making a game of him, then continued. "I'll show you," he said. "You must hold each type with a nix. That's a nick, see? Up." He picked up the 4 letters mentioned, showed each of them to Tom separately in order, and asked him if he recognized them. "Sure I do." "Now, pick 'em out," said the foreman with a grin after mixing 'em up in his hand. Tom made a lamentable failure of it. "It isn't so easy, you see." Then he explained the differences in the 4 letters, and left the boy to his own devices. Garland applied himself with much zeal to the task, and in the course of an hour mastered the lay of the lower case to the satisfaction of Runyon. The upper case was easy to learn so far as the alphabet was concerned. The other boxes he was told he could pick out at leisure, as the characters therein were seldom used. Then Tom was furnished with a stick, shown how to hold it, how the types were to be arranged in it with the nicks up, how, after a line of type had been set, he was to glance over it, correct any inaccuracies such as wrong letters, etc. The foreman set up the first line himself. "You see it is short, don't you? It doesn't fill the stick out. To accomplish that, you must equalize the spacing between the words as near as possible." And then Runyon illustrated his words. Then he set a second line and showed Tom there was no room to get the final D in the word "and" in. In this case, you reduce the spacing. First, after the comma, then a thinner space, after this W and how, and after this Y and Y, see? Tom thought he did, but wasn't quite sure. At length he got the hang of the matter, and Runyon left him to set up a few lines by himself, which fact he accomplished fairly well. When all hands adjourned to the kitchen at noon for dinner, which consisted of a piece of corned beef, a potato, and a consumptive-looking piece of apple pie, Tom felt he could reasonably pat himself on the back for the progress he had made in the art perspective. "How did you get on, Tom?" asked Dick, who had not appeared in the printing office all morning, his duties elsewhere taking up all his attention. "First class," replied Garland enthusiastically. "Do you like it?" "Sure I do." "I'm glad. It isn't so hard when you give your entire attention. I set up a whole stickful this morning, and Mr. Runyon said I was doing fine." "You're a wonder, Tom." "Oh, I don't know. There are others." "Not here." "Why not? I'll bet you did just as well when you started in. Come now, own up." "No. I was a whole day setting up part of a stickful so it would hang together." "Then it must be doing pretty well, eh?" "You surely are, Tom. I wish I was as smart as you." "Maybe you're smarter in your way." But the lame boy shook his head. "I'm not strong, and I can't accomplish as much as the other boys my size. I'd much rather study. I like to read and find out things. I like history and geography and astronomy and many things. Oh, if only I was allowed to learn." "Don't get discouraged, chum. Your time is coming." "Do you really think so?" asked the lame boy eagerly. "I do, really." And he meant it. End of chapter 3.